Randall stage the previous day, and being as how yesterday it was Randall Rose's play 12 Angry Men, we are here this hour to talk about 12 Angry Men. Before we start that, let me say first of all who I am. My name's Nancy Mielich, and I'm Literary Seminar Director here at the festival, beginning my 10th season here at the festival. Oh, thank you. Thank you. In our 52nd year at the Utah Shakespeare Festival. And we are here in part through the generosity of the Utah Humanities Council. They have been a longtime supporter of these seminars, and we thank them for their financial support and their belief in these seminars. We are here every morning of the season except Mondays. We are here on Sundays. Please spread the word that we are here on Sundays, but not on Mondays, because our marching orders are to talk about the previous day's plays. I also wanted to tell you that directly behind us in this building, there is an exhibit that opened last evening that I saw, and I highly recommend it. There are two exhibits in two galleries. One of them is the Southern Utah Art Invitational, which has been going for 60 plus years. In the second gallery, there's an exhibit that our props director, Ben Homan, put together of how scenic designers build their shows. And there are it's very, very informative, and we also have, Ben has put together scenes and the actual models of well, we have part of the tree from Midsummer Night's Dream from our 50th anniversary production. We have the Calliope from Scapan, which David knows a little bit about. And anyway, go see it. The hours are 10 to 8, Monday through Saturday, directly behind us there. Oh, excuse me. All right, so as many of you know, you buy your tickets preview week and opening week, of course, to see the shows, but some of you have been coming for a long time know that the directors give up their time and their sleep hours to come and be with us at 9 and 10 in the morning. This morning we have David Ivers, who, any newcomers here today that haven't been to the Utah Shakespeare Festival before? Welcome. Where are you from? South Jordan. All right. Well, I'll talk to you for a moment then. David Ivers has been with the company as an actor for, I think, over 30 productions. He was a resident actor with the Denver Theater Center for a number of years. He has directed here for us 4 productions: Cyrano de Bergerac, Romeo and Juliet, yes, Complete Works, and 12 Angry Men. So 12 Angry Men is his 4th directorial production here. His production of Taming of the Shrew is currently running at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. You saw him last year on stage in Scapan and Stones in His Pockets. So, okay, enough already. Welcome, David Ivers. Okay, so what we've been doing this week is I've been asking a question first of David or whomever the guest director is, and then we'll turn it over to all of you to ask questions or comments. I wanted to start by asking, excuse me, David, to tell us how your first introduction to 12 Angry Men, why you wanted to direct it, what you see the relevance of this play in 2013.
Boy, that's a lot. First introduction to the play was through the film, which I saw while I was in high school because my father was a huge film fanatic, and he introduced me to this film along with Failsafe and several other sort of landmark films of the era, and then I read the play, and it's just always stuck with me. And the other job that I have here along with Brian Vaughn is I'm one of the artistic directors of the theater, so that means I was already up in my office. I wasn't sleeping. But what that means is that we have to program our seasons, which is thrilling and challenging and trying to find the right balance. And in all honesty, I really push for us to do this play. One, we're trying to reinvigorate our commitment to the American classic here, which is part and parcel with what the Randall was built for. And we sort of got away from that for a while. And Brian and I feel that it's really important that we get back to it. Next year, we'll be doing a Sondheim musical, which we haven't done since Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum in 1995, and that's an American. That's a version of an American classic to me. He as a composer and an artist, and so I pushed for 12 Angry Men, and Brian supported it because I felt after an election year. And we just got lucky, I'll tell you, with the Zimmerman trial, just in terms of its relevancy. And lucky is an unfortunate word, but that's the thing about the play, is that for 60 years it has stayed, unfortunately, very relevant and succinctly American. And so I was struck by this notion of how powerful it is to think about 12 men being in a room and having to arrive at one decision. And that is not prevalent in the body of thinkers that currently run our country. We are a hung jury in our Congress all the time. And I felt that there was something reflective to me that could be mined from the play again that is currently part of the fabric of our nation. And so those are the things that really are important to me. And then the other aspect, and a gentleman asked me yesterday, you know, he said, you've done 2 racially charged plays in a row. Does that scare you, To Kill a Mockingbird and this? And I said, oh, that's funny. I hadn't really thought of it in those terms. I've thought of both of them through the eyes of being a father. That there are life lessons involved, and that there are things that are part of the fabric of and uniquely American that are important, that we continually come back and re-examine, you know? So.
Very good.
I thought it was brilliantly blocked. I loved the pictures, and I loved how they changed. And I was very conscious of the fact that that choreography of changing that picture all the time, and they're all on this flat surface all the time,
Yeah.
must have been incredibly challenging.
Can you hold the mic a little closer?
Did you feel, as you were in the middle of that process, was it an organic process? Did you have a sense of how you wanted to create those different pictures over time, or did it change as you went through the rehearsal process?
It was painstakingly specific.
Yeah.
It was like a gigantic Mahler orchestration.
Right.
Guys, it's a half note. You're on a full note. You got to pull back. I mean, honestly, it became organic after we said it. I took 2 weeks, 4 hours per rehearsal, about 6 pages per 4 hours to. Because you got 12 guys, 12 brilliant, brilliant actors in this room that I adore, each one of them. Thank you, I agree. They are the lifeblood of the production. I'm so proud of them and proud to be working with them. And I said to them at the beginning, you got to bear with me for a couple weeks, because we got to do the detail work while we're at it, while we're staging it. And it's tricky because I don't really want my hand to be seen on it as a director. It's got to look like behavior, but also they've got to be open. There's 12 guys around a table. You got to be able to see them. You got to the blocking and the staging has to reveal information in terms of story and plot. And what happens is when the guys, bless their hearts, had sort of instincts to get up or something, I would have to say, okay, you can get up there, but turn the page. And they'd turn the page, and we'd be like, you're talking up in 15 lines to number 9, who's over there. So why wouldn't you just turn and talk to number 7? So that was part of the, I mean, my prompt book looks like a series of football plays. I've said it looks like, you know, post up by the bathroom, little button hook around by the water cooler, you know. But I very much appreciate the compliment. Thank you. A lot of that, while we're passing the mic too, really is in the hands of our lighting designer, Jamie Smith, and she just, I think, did a brilliant job of making it really look like a moving picture, you know.
She stole part of my comment. The blocking was brilliant, and as a person who's done some directing, when you have that many people on stage, I'd use thumbtacks for each character, you know, and move them around, And with the, as was mentioned, with the flat stage, it is really tough. And you know, with the film, of course, you've got the camera. You can
Oh yeah.
you can take care of all that.
Right.
My first introduction was to the film in when I just started college, when it first came out. It was my father's favorite film. You know, you mentioned your father. It was my father's favorite film of all films, and maybe it was part of the father thing. Along with To Kill a Mockingbird, I think it's a film and a play that just impacts you, and you know, if you really get that inside you, that helps you not be so certain when you're judging. Boy, you know, that's such an important thing to have, you know, to be a mature person.
Yeah. Well, right. We often, I feel, continue the instinct of our gut, and sometimes, you know, life tells us, honor that, but before you move on that instinct, maybe sleep on it. Give it some thought, you know. Go to the next step to engage a kind of different process. It's a hard lesson to learn. I think the play is great that way as well.
I just recently read that eyewitnesses are notoriously unreliable, and thought about that when I was watching the play again. I had forgotten how angry that 12 Angry Men are. And that must have, I mean, that must have been a real challenge directorially, not to have a screaming match that just lasts, you know, the entire play. And I wondered how you figured that out. Did you say, okay, now this character gets to be really mad in this scene, or you know, how did you decide the highs and lows so that people just didn't get worn out with the angry exchanges?
It's a great question. You know, the script, Reginald Rose helps us. He helps us with that quite a bit. You know, I think for me, the entrance into the play for the company, when I first talked about it, has very little to do with the trial or the judicial system, and everything to do with the characteristics and the behavior of men, these 12 men. And everything you need to know about these guys is revealed in the play through what they do for a living and their relationship or non-relationship to their children. You have the loudest person, almost the loudest person, number 3 on stage, Max Robinson, who's brilliant, who obviously has a tortured relationship with his son, who very early on the play says, I run a messenger service called the Beck and Call Company, my wife's name. So Max and I said, let's just talk about that. What does it mean for a person to literally be in service to somebody else for your entire career? What can I get you? What do you need? I'm at your beck and call. Always on intake, and you get into a room and it's your chance. No wonder he's loud. He's away from work. And you can find this across the board with every single one of these characters, you know? And there's something to be said about that. The foreman is the assistant head coach. And Reginald Rose says, guess what? You're number 1. You're the foreman. Now you're head coach. It's brilliant construction. And so when you start to look at the play that way, what I said to the guys really was, when someone gets at you personally, not about the case, that's when the heat goes up. And the heat in the room, look at the room. It's hot. It's the hottest day of the year. It's small. We can't do this on stage, but at this time, there would have been 8 of those 12 guys would have smoked. Can you imagine being in that room with cigarette smoke on top of everything else, you know? So the orchestration of the anger, because it is 12 Angry Men and everyone's got to get there, I think is about the personal. Very early on, number 5 says there is something personal here, you know? And then it's just about, again, half notes, whole notes, you know? Are we in a major key, a minor key? And I literally kind of going, okay, a little more over here, let's, you know? and then the instinct of really amazing actors. You know, I will say we spent a lot of time orchestrating those overlaps where people are all shouting at once and you've got to kind of pick lines out of that. I mean, that stuff just doesn't just happen, you know. It happens, you can't understand a word and then you got to kind of orchestrate, all right, now Rick, you know, everyone's got to die down so we can hear Rick, and then Max has got to get over that line, and there's a lot of that happening. So
I was a jury foreman in a criminal trial, and reasonable doubt was the big problem, because we had people with their, I'm not sure he's innocent, and you know, it's not whether you're innocent, it's reasonable doubt, and that was emphasized nicely in the play. But I saw this when it first was on television. I saw it as a movie with Henry Fonda. I saw numerous stage productions, but this was, I mean, these are 12 stars. And when some aren't speaking, the others are listening and reacting. They're either listening to themselves or they're listening to the other characters. But there's not an actor up there who's not a thinking person, a reacting person. And the energy that came off that stage yesterday, I'm in row L, which is almost the back of the crowd. You had half the theater at Beth's Field. I mean, it just was overwhelming. You were so drawn into this that I could see why you didn't want an intermission, because we were just caught up. And when the play ended, everybody's on their feet applauding. And I have to tell you, I couldn't get up to get the mic very easily. I don't leap to my feet, but let's put it this way, I clambered to my feet so I could join in the standing ovation. It was one of the best productions of a play I have ever seen.
Oh, you're
And
so sweet.
I'm pushing 80, so.
That means a lot to me. Thank you. I was really proud of them yesterday. As a matter of fact, I couldn't see my cast afterwards because we had this snafu with the talkback and all that. And so I went back to my office after the talkback and I called every one of them individually and left them messages or talked to them, because, you know, the process, especially in previews, getting to opening, and then it'll change over the next 8 weeks, you know. They're in a really good place, I think, with the show. But it's petrifying. I've been there, you know, the first couple of audiences, there's so much unknown, and those guys are also in Brian Humphrey's in 2 other shows, you know. And and Fred Stone, you know, who's remarkable. And I agree with you. Every one of those guys, they're just amazing, you know.
I'm going to be perfectly frank and say I didn't think I would enjoy this play. You know,
Why is that?
well, I don't know, just 12 men in a little room and 12 angry men. It didn't sound, you know, but I figured it was at the festival, it's worth my time. But I was just totally mesmerized. I did not think I was going to enjoy it that much, and I was moved. And I just thought, you know, it just made me appreciate stuff I don't understand, like how a director works and how actors work. And I mean, that little tiny room, it just kind of made me, I walked in and looked at it and thought, ooh, yuck. And I thought, it's hot. And I didn't even think about the smoke. But to have such, I mean, I was just mesmerized to have all that stuff going, the way you broke it up. You know, the things would come to a tension and, you know, to an apex, and, you know, there would just be silence. And that was neat, because it just kind of broke, and we're ready for more. Okay, what's going to happen next?
Yeah.
And each character was just something else. So I applaud you. I thought it was wonderful. I had no
Thank
idea
you.
I was going to enjoy it that much.
Thanks. Well, tell your friends, please.
I
Let
will.
everyone know.
Hi. I was not planning we were not planning to go to but just one play. When we got here, somebody said, well, we're only going to be here one day. And so I said, well, okay, what else is showing? And they said 12 Angry Men. I thought, no. I don't really want to see that. But somebody insisted.
I know. Give me the comedies or the musicals.
Yeah, well, I don't know what I thought, but it was incredible, and I thank you for the time you invested in making it so. I loved the way the lights at the end, the way the lights came on, and there was this gavel or whatever, however you ended that was wonderful. I liked the rain and the street sounds. And as we left, I said this to my husband. I said, this is why we want the students to go to live theater. This is how it feels. I was so churned up after it. I only remember one other time, and that was the first time I ever went to live theater. It was The Crucible.
Oh,
and
that's a play I want us to do
that
desperately.
play so upset, and I think that's part of what you want.
Yeah.
You know, so you achieved it.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's great to hear about students too, you know. I actually, Nancy and I were talking about this the other day, that I can't believe this isn't required reading like in civics, you know. I mean, it's such an interesting peek into a side of the judicial system that we really don't, unless you've served on a jury, you know, nobody gets to go in the jury room unless you're doing your civic duty. Lawyers don't go in, judges can't go in, the guard can go in, you know, for evidence. It's a very interesting thing, and really, when I was researching this, a highly represented focus in literature and film and TV, and you know, which is good because it makes this special, but it's odd that it's not more prevalent, you know.
You
Yeah.
don't want to be a juror. You have to go in. They say you don't want to be selected, so you say, well, I was a newspaper man for 20 years, so my best friends are DA prosecutors. You know, and I thought, oh, that's going to get me off. And I got slapped into this damn trial.
Yeah. Well, it's funny we talked about that because I actually, I think the opinions vary. I said to the guys, it'd be very interesting for you to decide if you want to be here, if you want to be part of the system. Because when I was called to jury, I actually I remember distinctly feeling a kind of pride and a kind of patience with myself, even as I searched in downtown Denver for a place to park. I had this overwhelming feeling of like, it's okay, you can't find a place to park, but when you do and you walk 7 blocks, you're doing it because you are contributing to the society and the culture that you live in. And I said, I don't want you to tell me, to the guys, but I said, some of you may want to leave, or some of you, 11 of you obviously think this is going to go very quickly, but let's not make the assumption that from day one of the trial you hated being here, because that assumption polarizes stuff. Some people don't want to serve, and that's fair. But
Once you're in it, so you participate and you're proud to be in it.
yeah, but I didn't end up serving on this jury, and I've always in my life, especially now, desperately wanted to sit on a jury because I want to see that part of the process, you know.
Yesterday I asked you about the man who seemed to be quite racist and kept saying they are over multiplying, or you know, they're more children, having more children, and they're killing each other, and you know, who did they picture as they? And after I left, I started thinking, who did I picture as they? And I was surprised at myself as who I pictured. And I grew up in the South, and the people that I pictured as they, I wasn't really proud that that's who I pictured, but that's how I grew up, and that's my family, those around me, would have pictured those people as they, and that really made me stop and think, and I appreciated that point of, you know, not naming it, and not, you know, and making you think, who is it that you think is they? So
It's a great
thank you.
observation. And it's one of the things Reginald Rose did beautifully, was leaving that out on purpose. The onus is on you, as you say.
When David was here the other morning as our guest, we talked about this a bit, and I asked him if David had any idea of who Reginald Rose was talking about in terms of they, and did they ever talk about that in casts, in rehearsals? Do you want to talk about what you told me that day?
I told you, we're not talking about it, actors. I don't want to talk about it for a second, because the point is, as this young woman just pointed out, the onus is on you. He makes you decide what that person looks like to you. I could never recreate that on the stage. And the actors, frankly, I mean, they'll have to decide too. I mean, the characters know because they sat in the trial and they saw the kid, but the actors, you know, they don't know how the story ends. They've never said these words until they say them. They've never formulated the thought that they're about to formulate until it happens in that room. And so I said, I want to stay away from all discussion about that, because it will be far more immediate if you don't know and we don't know, and that we make the audience decide for themselves. As a matter of fact, Joe Vincent, who plays number 11 beautifully, we had a very early conversations where he said, I'm thinking about, how would you feel about if I wore a yarmulke? You know, like if I was actually, you know, an immigrant, but maybe there was a little bit of that I was Jewish and that was part of my, and I said, that's great, but as soon as you put that yarmulke on, we've identified. And once you identify, the onus is off. And he didn't quite get that, and we had to, and I ended up arm wrestling with him and saying, I'm just going to make an executive decision and say no, and you'll have to trust me. But as soon as you identify something, you then have a context to go, oh, well, I know what that's about. Yes, I get it. And that's no fun. Doesn't make you think. Doesn't make you sweat, you know?
Two comments. The L train noise at the very end, crescendoing, that was great. I don't know if that was part of just your production or if that was written in.
It's not written in.
Very good move.
Thank you.
And as we were discussing it last night, we were talking about machoism. And 60 years has passed approximately.
Yeah.
And our culture has gotten away a lot from machoism. It seems like it would be unusual for a father to say, I teach my kid to beat the tar out of anybody who looks at him crooked. Tell us about
Are you
the
joking?
machoism.
Well, I'll tell you about that, okay? My 4-year-old is in T-ball right now in Cedar City, Utah. I love Cedar City. I do. But there's some things in Cedar City that are just totally different from my growing up in Southern California, being born in San Francisco. And one of the things is that one of the guys, one of the fathers on the team, had a shirt with an AK-47 across it, you know, with a thing that says, you really want to date my daughter? You know, and I'm like, hey, let's play T-ball. You know, like, so I think you can look around every corner, frankly, and see some demonstration, it may not be vocal anymore, of a kind of machoism, you know. I also think, you know, it's funny, this is another play, but I was working on Taming of the Shrew all last year, and in that play we talked a lot about agreements that people make in relationships that you don't really, if someone peeked in and saw that agreement, they'd kind of go, are you living in a Stone Age? But because you love someone, you make those kinds of agreements all the time. As a matter of fact, in my director's notes for that show, I say, I talk about those agreements, and one of the things I say is, you know, we'll make sure that your parents understand that I take out the trash, you know, when they're in town. Because I don't want them to think you have to take out the trash, my spouse, you know. And you make these agreements that are like, you know, and I think that there's a case for that here too. And I think the reason we respond so emotionally to the play, at least one of the reasons I hope, is because we identify, we understand those people. We go out, who was it? Your brother-in-law. Take the mic. Tell us the story. You'll help. Pass the mic.
While it's traveling, I think it's revealing that this gentleman said that 60 years, at least if I'm making a judgment about him, he's moved on from that.
Awesome.
He is not of that ilk.
Yeah.
And here we are, and here I am making judgments about the person that had that T-shirt on yesterday.
Right.
Maybe he just did it to get a rise out. Maybe
Yeah,
somebody gave it to him for a birthday present, and he's satisfying the cousin who gave it to him, and he said, okay, I'll wear it.
Well, it depends on your definition of macho, too. You know, I've had a lot of guys invite me to go hunting here. And I'm like, not the face, not the face. You know, I mean, I couldn't kill anything, you know, and yet I want to be a part of the fabric of the community, you know. So I just think like, all right, I got to play a character. Let's go hunting, you know. But I associate hunting with macho. You know, it may not be, you know, and I have dear people in my life that go hunting. I do love to fish. That's a form of hunting. So maybe I'm just being, you know.
I have to be really careful
Right.
because my brother-in-law's sister is sitting right over
Oh,
here.
we'll turn the camera off.
Anyway, we were talking, and I think that one of the things that I said was I think that we probably all know at least one each of those characters. And
Yeah.
and we have in our own family people that are pretty bigoted and would come off exactly like one or two of those people did in that play. And along with that, I'd also like to comment that I think, you mentioned earlier that it's a reflection of things that are going on today and the Zimmerman trial, et cetera, et cetera. But it also says something about eventually it all comes out in the wash. Eventually,
Great point.
somehow or other we muddle through and it winds up being pretty good,
Great point.
so.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like we have to be. I had to be very careful, and in the room we have to be very careful, and in life about putting judgment on it. I can't direct a play and simultaneously judge the characters of the people. I got to kind of fall in love with all of them, and that's the great thing about the duplicity of human nature. Anyway, I still exist, and I'm very close with people who do activities and feel certain ways that are different than mine, but I still love them. My mother's one of them. And that's what makes us able to connect, and that is, if we can get that on stage and see that, then we're doing something right,
Just to comment off the subject there, if this play was written now, it would not be 12 Angry Men. You would have women on that jury. Would that be a possible change of the way the play happened, or would that still happen that way? Or would the women mitigate that anger?
One of the coolest things is that it's an all-female jury for the Zimmerman trial.
Really?
Right now.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Saw
Yeah.
6 women. Amazing. And really great. And a lot of people do produce this play, and they call it 12 Angry Jurors, and they add women and cast women. And we talked about that briefly. And I said, I get it, and I understand why, and I honor that as a choice, but it's not the play Reginald Rose wrote. And I'm not in the business of changing or censorship or anything like that. And if there are female jurors in this play, it just tells a different story, a different American story, a different time in an American history. And I was interested in us, as I said, reflectively telling the story he wrote and seeing how it resonates today. I also think that I don't know what it would play with women, because we're not doing that. So I don't know. I don't know how it would play. I know it's been done before. It'd be very interesting.
Is it the same script with the 12 Angry Jurors?
Yeah, there isn't a 12 Angry Jurors script that I've seen. It's just that they cast women as in this play.
And then they call it 12 Angry Jurors?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. But then, to your point,
Totally something else.
I think we have to be careful also in thinking that if it were 12 angry women, that you would have just as many varieties of personalities and opinions and political persuasion and all of that with 12 women that had been chosen for the trial. We had this discussion quite frequently last year when we presented To Kill a Mockingbird, and that play is set in the 30s and an all-male jury. And because it was a rape trial, if it had been women on the jury, would it have been a different verdict? Who knows?
I mean, the thing about it is that the words aren't going to change in the text. So if you have a woman playing number 10, that woman has to say the same things, And I don't know how that translates. And it was hard for Brian and I, actually, not so much because of the issue of, the play. It was harder for us, and you'll see reflected in next season and last season. It was hard for us because it was such a male-heavy season between this and Peter and the Starcatcher, which is why we're doing an all-female musical in the fall, and why next year we're bringing a world premiere of Sense and Sensibility. We're doing Twelfth Night, which has, incredibly powerful female roles in it. Into the Woods has more women than men, and that's an important thing, because both he and I come from the stock of very strong women. And So that was a larger issue for us. Like, should we really do this now? The season is so male-centric that way. But last season, because we did Mary Stuart, and we did, we felt like, all right, well, we can look at it maybe over 3 seasons of balance, So it's tricky.
Yes, I, like the gentleman up in front, was a jury foreman at one time. And about 30, 40 years ago, I saw the film, and I thought that prepared me for what I was about to do, because the point of the play is that your civic responsibility and taking that seriously and making sure everyone there takes that seriously. And I happened to become the jury foreman, and I think I was actually able to do my job better having seen that. And now I hope that people that have seen your production and they go forward and they sit on a jury, that they're better prepared to be open to someone else's idea and not have a fixed idea that okay, this is the way it has to be. It's my way or the highway. But the comparison of your production to the film was just night and day for me. Maybe it's my stage of life, but I was moved the entire 90 minutes of that production, and as you say, just every detail, the blocking, the choreography, the acting is just superb. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm glad you said 90 minutes. It's actually 102, so it makes me feel like it's good that it was.
The other thing about film and play, and I had seen the film before. I've seen the play. This is the 3rd time I saw it in New York, and I saw it at Pioneer Theater in Salt Lake City. And though they don't lock the doors at the Randall Theater, we are in that room with those people for 110 minutes. 102